The first time I remember realizing that life wasn't fair was my sister Victoria's 16th birthday. I was 13 years old, and seeing that shiny red Volkswagen Beetle parked in our driveway topped with a giant bow was something out of a movie. Victoria's golden curls bounced as she ran to hug our parents, squealing with delight. I stood there, gripping my tattered backpack, a fit of something I couldn't quite name. Envy, perhaps, or resentment hitting me. When my 16th birthday came around 3 years later, there was no car with a bow on it. I received Dad's ancient Honda, a clunker from the early 90s that had more than 150,000 miles on it, and a tendency to break down at the worst time. "It's useful," Dad said, slapping the hood as though it were a faithful pet. "You're going to enjoy it more because you earned it." Earned it? I wanted to scream. Victoria didn't need to earn anything. Everything was handed to her on a silver platter. Her car, her clothes, her perfect grades, which I suspected had more to do with her charm than her intelligence. Meanwhile, I was the one pulling all-nighters to study, working part-time jobs to save for college, and figuring out how to fix that damn Honda when it eventually coughed to the side of the road. Our parents were not subtle in their favoritism. Victoria was the golden child, beautiful, gregarious, and effortlessly charming. I was the quiet one, the one who disappeared into the background. If Victoria was the sun, I was the moon, always orbiting her glow. The divide between us was thrown sharply into focus when college time arrived. Victoria had her sights set on a fancy private university, and our parents didn't bat an eye at paying for it. Tuition, room and board, a monthly allowance, a blank check. I, on the other hand, was scrambling for scholarships in my senior year of high school. I wrote essays until the wee hours of the morning, held a perfect GPA, and participated in extracurriculars, all while trying to make myself a competitive candidate. So, when I finally got a full-ride scholarship to a state university, I thought my parents would be pleased. Instead, Dad just shrugged and said, "Well, at least we don't have to worry about paying for you." Mom interjected, "Victoria's school has such a good reputation though. It will open so many doors for her." I swallowed the urge to bite and packed my bags, ready to prove myself. College was my salve, my opportunity to carve out a life free from Victoria's glow. College was my sanctuary. For the first time, I felt as if I could breathe. The campus was a whole world away from the stifling environment of my family, and I immersed myself in my courses with an obsessiveness that was, in hindsight, borderline. Finance became my passion, not just because I was good at it, but because it stood for stability, control, and the potential for a future I could create for myself. I was in over my head, working long hours while studying a full course load, working part-time jobs, and juggling internships. While my peers were out at the club on the weekends, I was spending my Friday nights crunching numbers and studying economic trends. It wasn't glamorous, but it was rewarding in a way I had not anticipated. Every late night I sat up studying, every dollar I managed to scrape together, felt like a step toward building something more, living a life that wasn't about my family's expectations or the shadow of my sister. Victoria, on the other hand, appeared to float through life with the effortless ease she'd always had. She married Nathan soon after graduating, and they immediately had a family. By the time I got my first job as an investment analyst, she was already a mother of 2, living in a tiny rental flat and complaining about space. I didn't envy her, not really, but there were times, late at night, typically, when I was alone in my tiny apartment, when I wondered if I was missing something. Was I too career-driven? Should I have been building a family instead of a portfolio? Those doubts never lasted very long. I'd think about the Honda, about the scholarships, about how many times I'd been told to be practical, while Victoria was given everything she wanted. No, I wasn't missing anything. I was constructing something that belonged to me alone. My colleagues didn't always agree with my frugality. They mocked me for bringing leftovers to work instead of joining them for lunch, for taking the bus instead of splurging on a cab, for wearing the same rotation of outfits day in and day out. Live a little, they'd tell me, as if just spending money Whatever the consequences was the secret to happiness. But I had a plan, and I wasn't going to let their teasing ruin it. When I finally turned 30, I had a healthy savings account and a vision of what I wanted. A house. Not just any home, but one that reflected who I was. A quiet, cozy retreat where I could escape the noise. I began looking at real estate listings in my free time, imagining sunlit kitchens and wraparound porches. It felt like a pipe dream at first, but with every paycheck, every bonus, every carefully budgeted month, it became one step closer to reality. Then, one day, I discovered it. A lovely 2-bedroom cottage on the city's fringes. It was ideal, a sunroom filled with natural light, a garden with raised beds, and a fireplace that beckoned on winter nights. The cost fit my budget, and I figured it was destiny. I put in an offer that day, my heart racing as I signed the paperwork. This was it. My dream was finally attainable. The family dinner began like any other. Mom had called earlier in the week with her usual not-so-subtle reminder. Don't forget, we're expecting you Saturday. Victoria and Nathan are coming with the kids. And please try to be on time for once. I pulled up to their house in the suburbs at 5 p.m. sharp, and the driveway was already full with Victoria's minivan. I parked on the street and prepared myself for the mayhem within. The kids were making a mess as usual, and Mom was buzzing around the kitchen like a hummingbird, stressing over every little detail. Dad was already sitting in his recliner, buried behind his newspaper, and Nathan droned on about his latest work drama. I sat down at my usual spot at the table, and blocking out the noise, scrolled through real estate listings on my phone. I had just discovered the perfect house. A rustic little cottage with a wraparound porch and a sunroom that made my heart ache. I lost myself in the fantasy of morning coffee on that porch when Mom's voice broke through the noise. What's so interesting on that phone? You hardly ate anything. I paused, then resolved to share my news. The truth is, I've already bought a house, I said, unable to disguise my enthusiasm. The room went silent. Even the children halted in mid-motion, sensing the change in the air. Then, all hell broke loose. You purchased a house without consulting us, Dad bellowed, pounding his fist on the table. The water glasses rattled, and Andrew started to. The room erupted into chaos. Victoria sobbed. Mom shouted. Dad warned. I picked up my bag and left, echoes of their voices behind me. The fallout was swift and savage. Victoria hounded me with guilt trips, sending pictures of her kids jammed into their tiny apartment. Mom and Dad stormed over to my door, insisting I take a second look. Relatives and family friends called, all delivering the same message. Family comes first. But I stood my ground. I switched my phone number, blocked them on social media, and poured all my energy into creating my new life. My cottage was my sanctuary. Finally, somewhere I could breathe, no longer smothered by their expectations. Months went by, and I was flourishing. My career was on the rise, and I was offered a directorship in London. I was promoted to a senior role in another industry, with a handsome salary increase and a company flat in Kensington. I agreed without hesitation, looking forward to the new adventure. Elsewhere, Victoria and Nathan were unsuccessfully searching for a new apartment after being evicted from their rental. They moved in with our parents, packing their 3 kids into the guest room. As for Mom and Dad, who'd always counted on this idea of family sticking together, it was too much for them. When Dad called and asked me for help, I suggested a financial advisor. She focuses on retirement planning, I said. I will send you her contact information. It was a minor gesture, but it was all I was prepared to offer. I had crafted a life on my own terms, and I wasn't going to let their entitlement mess it up. The last step in my independence was moving to London. The city was everything I had ever wanted, vibrant, cosmopolitan, and filled with hope. As I settled into my new flat in Kensington, it was a world away from the small apartments and cramped spaces I had called home in the past. With soaring ceilings, a contemporary kitchen, and a view of the city skyline that never failed to take my breath away. Work was exhilarating. It was my first time directing. I had more to do than ever, making decisions, and I loved it. My team respected me, and I experienced a feeling of achievement I hadn't realized was possible. For the first time in my life, I was not just surviving, I was thriving. My friendships developed quickly, sharing after-work drinks with colleagues and sightseeing on weekends. I even began dating a kind, funny man who valued me for me, not for what I could do for him. It felt like level ground, where I wasn't always giving and getting nothing in return. Back home, my family kept posting passive-aggressive messages on social media, but I didn't care. I was too busy living my life, a life that was finally unambiguously my own. One evening, I was sitting on the balcony of my flat, watching the city lights flicker to life as I inched my teacup closer to my lips, when I experienced a deep contentment. I had done it. I was no longer defined by the voice of a world that had tried so hard to bind my soul for generations. It was a hard-fought journey, but it was worth it. I'd learned that boundaries weren't selfish. They were essential, and at times, the best way to win was to leave the battlefield altogether. As for my family, I wished peace for them, but I was no longer responsible for their happiness. I was free, and I would never look back. While I sip tea and watch the rain beat down from my flat in Kensington, I can't help but think about how far I've. The little girl who lived in the shadow of her sister's brilliance has become a woman who knows her value. I built a career, a home, and a life that brings me satisfaction. It was not an easy journey, not by far, but it was rewarding. I've realized that it's not selfish to set boundaries. It's crucial, and sometimes the best way to win is to leave the battlefield altogether. As for my family, I wish them peace. Their happiness, however, is no longer my responsibility. I've escaped, and I'm never going back. Sitting in my flat in Kensington, sipping a cup of tea as raindrops stream down the window, I can't help but look back at the long road I've traveled. The little girl who once lived in the shadow of her sister's brilliance has grown into a woman who understands her worth. I have built a career, a home, and a life that bring me fulfillment and joy. It wasn't an easy journey, but it was rewarding. I've come to realize that setting boundaries isn't selfish. It's essential, and sometimes the greatest victory is choosing not to step into the arena at all. As for my family, I wish them peace, but their happiness is no longer my responsibility. I have set myself free, and there is no turning back.